we got a good topic this week.
Functional fitness.
What's up, guys? I'm Dr. Donald. This functional beast over here is Dr. Ben, and this week we're going to talk about what is functional fitness. So please explain yourself. Why is this functional?
I got lots of bands doing lots of stuff.
Function.
I've got balance pads here for balance.
Function.
I got 2 different kinds of weights for curling, pressing, lifting,
Function.
and curling, pressing, lifting, curling,
Function.
back, over. That's 1.
How many reps are you doing?
Typically 1,000 to 2, somewhere in that range.
I love how you went down.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So let's really talk about what this actually means. Let's move this mat out of the way so we can get real close and personal with each other. That's clearly not functional. However, that's kind of what the space is nowadays. Especially in our industry and what the industry as a whole sell to the consumers and market to the consumers as functional.
Correct. So like one thing I saw is and I'm totally guilty of this. I started training back in the year 2000, training other human beings.
Mm-hmm. So basically, you're a terrible person.
Take it easy. but yes, I did do this exercise, and this whole phenomenon of functional fitness came out, which always begged the question of unfunctional fitness, right? Like I was doing all this unfunctional fitness, and really it was like the progression from doing machine-based exercises to, I would say, like free weights. Like that's the true, I would say, dichotomy. If you were to go from these machines aren't functional because I'm seated versus these standing motions or free weight motions are functional. From there, somehow it turned into like a lot of single leg bicep curls, right? Like single leg bicep curls were like a phenomenon that you probably saw in the gym in the early 2000s. Yeah, so this increased function because you're balancing on one leg. During that era when you were trying to make things more functional, trying to be creative, when in doubt, stand on one leg, get out, and that makes everything better. And my point is like, let's talk about like, what does function mean to you?
Yeah.
From a movement standpoint, what does function mean to you?
And me personally, it's predicated off of a need, right? It's end goal in mind, right? And that gives you a reference, right? So I use an analogy as like, if you say this road is really long, it doesn't mean anything if you don't have a reference in what long is, right? So if something is functional only relative to what your end goal is, does that make sense?
Absolutely. So, absolutely, it makes
Okay.
sense. So one thing that, if it doesn't, I'm going to agree with you.
Yeah, right?
Absolutely.
The camera's on, just agree.
Now back to what I need to say.
Yeah.
So like let's like kind of backtrack and break down a couple motions. So from a functional standpoint, like if I look at a person and let's say they have like knee pain, and then I do a couple different assessments and I see like they have knee pain, but the knee pain is less of like, oh, there's a torn meniscus or ACL or there's structural damage. The knee pain is more brought out by the way that they're doing a movement. And I say, hey, can you show me your squat pattern? And arguably the squat is one of the most functional motions simply because you cannot live if you have legs that are functioning without squatting up and down in a chair, right? So extremely functional exercise for people. However, like let's say you're doing it and you notice like at the squat that you are at the bottom of your squat, you're standing on your toes and your knees are really far forward. Your heels are up in the air and that's giving you some knee pain. So I'm like, well, is that squat still functional for that person? And then you're like, hey, it's your leg day, so the next thing that you're gonna do is maybe some leg extension exercises, right? So now we're pumping the quads even more. So to me, that's like a breakdown in function because the squat looks funky, and it's the squat, which is a functional exercise that has now become possibly like an unfunctional pattern for that person. So to me, if I saw that person, it'd be, okay, well, what can I do to increase function while they're doing that specific motion? And what it wouldn't be is standing on one leg and doing a bicep curl or an overhead press or anything like that. What it would probably be is something like a glute bridge or a glute bridge march, or something to get the backside of their legs firing up so that when they do the squatting pattern, they're not sliding forward onto the toes. And that would be a functional motion or a functional exercises versus something that I like to call like overly sexy, right? When you start putting like too many things together.
Yeah. I was gonna say, that's a perfect example with the end in mind. Like it's relative to training without knee pain, right? Like that's
absolutely
the function is life without knee pain. So therefore, that concept becomes functional for that person relative to that person. Yeah. It's not the more complex, or I guess complex is a great word. It's not the more complex a movement becomes, which makes it functional.
Correct.
Right? It's more so we have a goal, which is no knee pain. Right? For now, things are pissed off. Right? Patella tendon is an easy one because it's very common. It's just mad at us. So let's not pick the scab for a little bit. Move through the hips more. Right? That's what you. This was the example. We're going to try to move through the hips more right now.
Absolutely.
Less knee bend. Just not saying that that's bad. Eventually, going back into that will be healthy and you'll be strong enough and less sensitive to. But the end goal, less knee pain. That glute bridge becomes a functional exercise, and it's a glute bridge. Right. It's not sexy. It's not bouncing on a balance pad. It's not 5 bands in places.
Absolutely, right? So like that's one thing that I see is like, you know, when you hear the term like functional fitness, a lot of times that comes into your mind is bands, medicine balls, and like things of taking something and like putting a turn on it. Now there is some extremely good reasons to do all those kinds of things. For example, like does squatting with a band on your knees, like I got a band on my knees and I'm squatting, does that make my squat pattern better or more functional? And the question is, I don't know. What did happen? Why is that on your knees, right? Like, is there a deficit? Are you squatting, and when you're squatting, you start to do like that Bambi baby deer squat? Well then maybe adding a stimulus that allows your legs to bow outward is beneficial. What I have seen, and this is more of a recent phenomenon with athletes, is you can, listen to me, you can get too much posterior chain activation. You can overtrain your glutes, right? So like you can do too much of that motion. Less likely to do those things.
Sure.
Another thing too, again, with function in mind, you think about like jumping is something that I think a lot of people will do that they consider it functional because you need to jump. For those of you that haven't jumped in, let's say, over a year, okay? One thing that happens when you jump, the amount of force that is put on your body is...
And not like jump, like I jumped for joy because my team just won the Super Bowl and that's the only time I jumped in a year. Actually trained jumping.
Yeah, like a jump squat.
Or like did multiple reps of something for a set, or challenge yourself with a jumping challenge, like any of those, just to clarify.
So like jumping is one thing that you'll see in like a lot of different class formats, a lot of different things, and it's like jumping is functional. And one thing I do want you to really, really, really think about is when was the last time where you're like, man, I really wish I should have jumped over that, you know, like in my daily life, I found it extremely necessary for me to be able to jump over that. Like I have to be able to jump over that or jump on something. So like, I think that jumping is really, really good. I think that jumping has a time and a place, and I think jumping should be introduced from a progressional standpoint.
Correct.
However, if we look at it just from a sheer function of your function of your daily life and daily need, when has jumping itself been something that's, I need to be able to do this? So I think jumping is used not always from a performance standpoint. It gets this functional thing put on it. However, the actual like carryover to what it functionally does to your body with daily movements.
And I'll use like common goals, right? Go back to the goal thing. Like common goal of like weight loss and general health, organ function is not dependent upon a plyometric or jumping. Right? So that's not jumping in that case wouldn't necessarily be functional.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Or what's another good goal that people have that wouldn't have much to do with it?
Like function. So
like looking better. Like I want my biceps to be really ripped. I want my chest to be really big. Literally has nothing to do with jumping.
Absolutely not. I would say like other things that are like functionally maybe like not like necessary or like overdone. Rotational motion. So like in general, core exercises, a lot of times when we're trying to do core exercises, you'll see a lot of like full crunches or a lot of like leg lifts or a lot of like really fast turning and rotational things, because it's like you got to work your entire core. And I mean, people are a little bit more aware of what the core is, in the sense that I go like, what's your core? And they're like, this whole thing, I got to work the obliques, you know, the dorsimuses, you know, it's all connected. It's all connected. So I got to get all of that going, you know, so I got to move in all these different directions to do it. And to be honest, like a lot of these back injuries that we see occur not because the person can't accelerate into a rotational motion. It has to do with the fact that the person can't decelerate rotational force, right? So that comes into like an anti-rotational exercise, something like a side plank versus like a loaded side bend.
Totally.
Like what is better?
Absolutely. For you? I mean, if you get down into this position and you really create tension, that's working the same muscles without bending so much, which over time can create some sensitivity. So
yeah,
like that's kind of what you were saying. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
The perfect example. So my point is like, if you were to say like, what is functional fitness, and let's just look at it from a strength training standpoint, I really think like the first basic movements that were incorporated when people started lifting are probably some of the most functional movements there. And then from that, like everything else, over time, like we wanted to figure out ways to make working out more comfortable, right? So you're gonna wanna sit into a nice machine. You want to lay back into it, feel so good, nice and stable, and then you hit your presses inside that machine, right? So now that was like the progression of that. Where the original motions, like the squat, the deadlift motions, the lunging or split squat motions, the overhead pressing motions, the pushing motions, and basic pulling motions from an overall standpoint still tend to be the highest functional motions. They work the largest parts of your body. They work large muscle groups together. And then everything else is more accessory that's working around it, right?
Sure.
And then you would look at like the core. So again, if you are brand new to exercise, you're taking different kinds of classes, and the demand is like, hey, let's jump today, or let's do all these crazy twisty motions, pull it back and look at like the foundational things of like where you're at, and just squat, lunge, hinge, glute bridge, plank, your way into that till your body starts to develop a baseline and some tissue tolerance, and then look at like slowly adding these higher impact exercises or thresholds.
Yes. And remember, if you've seen it, if you're doing an exercise and the reason why you're doing an exercise is because you saw it on Instagram, that's not a good reason. Ask yourself why you're doing an exercise. Does it fit your goal?
Take that back. What if it's one of our exercises?
Then, I mean, if it's our Instagram, of course, listen to it.
They're all functional.
No. Even then, if that's the reason, peel back the why. And
Absolutely.
The more you ask the why, the more you'll start to understand like why you're training for one, what the goal is, and how to fit a routine or exercises to meet your function.
Yeah.
And your desired function.
And again, for those of you that want to like, just straight look better, or you want bigger arms,
Yeah, nothing wrong with it.
put both feet on the ground, do 10 to 8 to 15 reps, and pump it out. Get that hypertrophy. That's how you make muscles grow. You do volume, time under tension, your muscles grow.
Lift heavy weight a lot of times.
It'll get you bigger and stronger.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But that's not everyone's goal.
No.
But bicep curls to a figure competitor is absolutely functional.
Necessary.
Right, more than functional, right?
Yeah.
It's you'd be left in the dust if you didn't do it.
Yeah. Bicep curls.
That is steroids.
Yeah. Yeah. Another topic. Bicep curls are like if you're a strength and conditioning coach and you're doing bicep curls, it's like a guilty pleasure, right? So that's like something that we see in our world.
Don't record this.
Yeah. You're getting your curl sets in. But like to the person that's not familiar with that, bicep curls is one of those exercises that it's always debated on. There's no function to it. There's no point in doing it.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything. And then like, I disagree strongly.
Hi, if I were you, I would too, man.
Yeah,
I would too.
Honestly, I haven't done a bicep curl since
So, I mean,
yesterday.
I guess to summarize this up, I'll go back to what I said earlier is if you don't have an idea of what your goals are and what the needs are, like if you haven't done a needs analysis, you have no idea what the function is. So we haven't set anything to make a marker relative to your goal. So you have to make that first, and then once you understand the goal, fit the movements, the stressors to challenge yourself to make your goal, and then it's functional.
Absolutely. And then lastly, like
that would totally fit on like Webster's dictionary of functional, right?
it would. And then just have some common sense. Like if you're not working out and you're getting started and you're jumping on machines and you're getting in there, get after it and be proud of what you're doing.
Absolutely.
That's not making you less functional than what you were doing before, which is absolutely nothing, right? Like
Sure.
So again, like
especially if the goal is getting in shape, means move more, however means necessary.
Yeah. So hopefully that wasn't confusing and didn't seem like we were talking in circles. But the term
Speak for yourself, man.
But hopefully that adds some clarity of the debate of functional fitness.
Yeah.
What is function?
Mm-hmm.
What isn't function? And
This reminds me of like the conjunction junction. What's your function?
Yeah.
Remember that song?
yeah, of course I remember that song.
But if you guys have any other questions too, we'd love to answer them. So if this is YouTube, which is most likely YouTube, what's our email?
info@kirehab.com.
So email us, ask us questions. This is on Instagram, direct message us. We'd love to, if you want to hear about something or want us to teach you guys about something, that's great.
Or if you got a question about an exercise, whether it's functional and you are doing it,
Oh yeah.
or you see somebody doing it, please send us
Send it in.
Send us the video. And
Absolutely.
We will break that down.
Even if you think it's crazy, we can find a function that would probably be good for it.
Or we can explain the hell out of why that's crazy.
You're right. So I think that's it. That wraps everything up, guys. I got nothing.
What about that like song? I'm just a bill on Capitol. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do, but I can't remember the beat. And I feel like that was not the beat.
Not even close. But it really,
And I feel like you just mumbled it, so I'm the only like you just whispered something in my ear.
It's like that conjunction. What's your function song? All right, you guys.
Oh
Bye.
my God. All right, guys. Until next time. As always, this isn't goodbye. This is just see you later.